You ever notice how sometimes the people with the fanciest titles, the biggest names, can be the smallest people in the room? That's exactly how it started for me that night at the Lincoln Art Center, a place I'd only ever seen on TV, where the red velvet ropes are more for keeping out the likes of me than for decoration. I was 16, just a kid with a white cane and a head full of music. Nobody believed I could play. And I'll never forget the moment Vincent Sterling, the great Vincent Sterling, turned to me and said loud enough for the whole New York elite to hear, "Hey kid, how about playing something for us? I bet, happy birthday." Yeah, that happened. The laughter rippled through the hall, all pearls and perfume, the sort of laughter that makes you want to shrink into your seat if you're the shrinking type. My music teacher squeezed my arm, but nobody spoke up. Not Ms. Wells, the foundation director, not the critics, not even the other musicians. See, Vincent was their star, a man in an Armani tux who could fill a room with a whisper. What he couldn't see was me, just a blind kid who'd practiced every day in the basement of a church with a keyboard held together by duct tape and hope. I didn't shake, though. If you've spent as many hours alone with music as I have, you learn to let other people's noise pass through you. So when Vincent leaned in with that smirk dripping with fake generosity, I just said, "Actually, I prefer Bach." And let me tell you, the air went out of that room like someone popped a balloon. Bach, really? Vincent laughed, and I could feel the heat from every eyeball in the place. "What piece could you play, young man?" he asked, like he was already certain of the answer. "Partita number 2 in C minor," I told him. "But maybe it's a little too advanced for this audience." Now you want to talk about silence. That was the kind that makes people check their watches, cough into their napkins, glance sideways so nobody catches them watching what comes next. Let me back up a sec. Nobody there knew about the accident, how I lost my parents and my sight in a single night, how music became the only language that made sense. My Aunt Deborah, she's the real hero. She worked nights at the conservatory, borrowed recordings, found me Braille scores, and told me every day that surviving meant more than breathing. It meant not letting people like Vincent decide who you are. So Vincent decided to turn the screws a little. He played a few bars of what was supposed to be my piece, but in the wrong key, D major, not C minor. He thought he was clever, but I called him out right there. Partita number 2 is in C minor. "Dr. Sterling," I said, throwing in a little extra formality for good measure. The crowd got real still, like they were trying to remember whether clapping was even allowed at this point. Vincent tried to recover, claimed he was just testing my ear, but the truth was out. He wanted to trip me up, wanted the crowd to see me stumble. But I kept it steady. I even dropped a little history just so he knew I wasn't a charity case. Bach wrote this after his wife died. Every movement's a stage of grief. That's why it needs more than just technique. It needs someone who knows loss. His face, man, you had to see it. For the first time all night, he looked like someone who couldn't remember the next line in the play. The big donors, the Rothschilds, and all the others, they started whispering, getting twitchy. But Dr. Webb, the symphony conductor, tried to smooth things over. Vincent wouldn't have it. Though he pushed me to play, I said, "Let me ask anyone here ever lose everything in one moment and have to rebuild your soul?" Note by note, the silence turned. You know what I mean? It was less about awkwardness, more about curiosity, even respect. So Vincent took his shot first, played the opening with perfect technique, every note clean, every gesture measured. The audience applauded, polite but unmoved. And when he was done, he turned to me with a look that said, "Your turn, boy." But right then I did something that wasn't in his script. I addressed the room, told them what the piece really meant, what Bach had gone through, how every note was soaked in grief and hope. Some people rolled their eyes, but I could see well since the shift. They weren't laughing anymore. When I sat down, my hands knew those keys like they knew my own scars. All those years, all those hours in the church basement, every disappointment and every tiny victory, it all flowed into my fingers. The first notes came out and the room stopped breathing. You could hear shoes shuffling in the back, the faint whir of the chandelier's fan, nothing else. I played the pain, not just the notes. I played for every kid who'd been told they didn't belong, every outsider watching through the window while the party went on inside. As the music built, I could feel Vincent behind me, could feel the cracks in his confidence. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let it go to waste. Margaret Rothschild, who'd sneered at me earlier, was wiping tears away. Patricia Wells, the foundation director, actually gripped her chair so tight I thought she might snap it. Even Dr. Webb leaned forward, hands clasped like he was seeing something holy. By the time I finished, the place erupted. I don't mean polite applause. I mean a standing ovation, people hugging each other, whispering like they'd just witnessed a miracle. Vincent stood off to the side, looking like a man who just watched his house burn down because he had. In 15 minutes, everything he'd built on pride and reputation was leveled by a blind kid from the projects who just wanted to play. Dr. Webb approached, voice soft but firm. Vincent, we need to talk about your contract. The Rothschilds, they were already on their phones. News of what happened would travel through Manhattan before we'd even left the building. I turned to Vincent, held out my hand, and thanked him because, honestly, he gave me the best stage I could have asked for. Sometimes you got to be forced into the fire to show folks you're forged in it. 6 months later, I was walking the halls of Juilliard on a full ride, youngest ever to do it. Aunt Deborah cried the first time she saw my practice room, big windows overlooking Central Park, not a leaky basement in sight. Margaret Rothschild funded a program to find overlooked talent in the poorest neighborhoods. Privilege without purpose is just waste, she said on the record. People finally started listening. Vincent, he lost his contracts, his tours, his name. The video of that night went viral. Millions watched, and nobody forgot the lesson. Music critics, people who never noticed me before, wrote that Sterling's technique was perfect, but his playing was hollow, missing the soul they'd found in mine. Patricia Wells resigned. The board made it clear no more letting bigotry hide behind culture. Aunt Deborah asked if I was angry about how it all happened. Truth? Not really. Vincent Sterling gave me an audience. Sometimes the best revenge is simply to become undeniable, to let your gift shine so bright it outlasts every shadow thrown your way. On the night I played Carnegie Hall, that same partita filled the air, and when the last note faded, I told the crowd, music doesn't belong to any of us. She's here to connect hearts no matter where we come from. The ovation was long, loud, and yeah, it felt like justice. 2 years later, my album hit #1. Vincent gave piano lessons in a neighborhood school. I started programs for kids like me, making sure nobody's talent gets left in the dark just because they don't fit someone else's idea of what genius looks like. Because, let's be honest, heights built on prejudice always crash down. But the music lives on. So let me ask you, have you ever seen real talent wasted because of someone else's ignorance? When tradition becomes just another excuse for injustice, what do? Tell me your stories, share your thoughts below, because maybe it's time we all raise the volume for those who are usually silenced.